Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, mammals. Before spring break, I posted a really long video that covered a whole lot of ground over all the types of macromolecules that you'll have to know about and how to identify them. And a lot of people found that confusing just because it was so much material, they didn't know where to go to find answers to their questions. So I'm going to post a series of 4 videos that focus on the 4 types of macromolecules that you need to know about, and I'm starting with carbohydrates. So in this video, I will cover how to identify it when you see a picture of a macromolecule, how to know that it is a type of carbohydrate by looking at the functional groups that are present. Then I'm going to talk about the monomers that can make up carbohydrates and the polymers that can be built out of those, and the names that are attached to the different monomers versus the different polymers. And lastly, I'll wrap up with how they are used in organisms. Starting off, here is a single monomer of a carbohydrate so that we can look at the things that you are going to be using to identify it. It's going to have a ring of carbons. I won't go into detail again, but remember that the ends and the bends and the junctions, even though they're not labeled, are going to be carbons. So the ring may have a different number of carbon atoms, 4, 5, that doesn't matter. And seeing a ring of carbons is not a surefire giveaway of carbohydrates, but they're going to have a ring of carbons. When you see that with an ether, this is your ether right here, where you've got a singly bonded oxygen in the middle of the chain. That's our ether. And when you see that with a series of alcohols, this combination is going to let you know that you've got a carbohydrate. The exact arrangement of where these alcohols are, how many they are, and how they're arranged, whether they're kind of above or below the ring of carbon, is what makes different monomers of carbohydrates different. But for your purposes, you just have to recognize it as a single carbohydrate monomer by saying that you've got this ring, an ether, and some alcohols. So that's going to be your giveaways that it is a carbohydrate. So the basic unit, the monomer of a carbohydrate, is called a monosaccharide. So if you see a carbohydrate that is composed of just one carbon ring, it's a monosaccharide. They're going to form polymers by dehydration. So dehydration is the removal of water, and they're going to form a water by combining, wanted my highlighter, by combining this oxygen and this hydrogen with this hydrogen. So those guys are going to leave as water, and this oxygen is going to bond with this carbon, forming another ether. So the product of this reaction will now be these two rings joined together with another ether. I'm not going to take the time to draw out all of the alcohols. I'll let you use your imagination. But the monomers join together by removing a water from here so that you get another ether joining the rings. When you have two rings, this is called a disaccharide. If you have more than two, then it would be a polysaccharide. And if you have a very, very, very large polysaccharide, a term that you need to know for that is a starch. You probably recognize this from like foods and health. Starches, when we eat starchy foods, they're composed of very large polysaccharides. I won't show you a picture of a starch and ask you to label it as starch. They're too big. But you do need to know conceptually that starches are just really big polysaccharides. Lots of monomers are joined together. Lastly, let's talk about function. Energy. Plants and animals use carbohydrates as energy. In the very, very short term, like immediate energy, they use monosaccharides, particularly the monosaccharide glucose. Glucose is a term that you'll want to know for test materials and for biology next year. It's a monosaccharide that is used in a lot of aerobic respiration and as immediate energy for plants and animals. The larger saccharides are for your more medium term energy. So basically, the more monomers it's made out of, like the bigger the polysaccharide, the longer term it's going to be. Because, for instance, your body can't really use a disaccharide, it has to split it into two monosaccharides. So the bigger it is, the longer it's going to take your body to split it down into individual monomers. So the longer term that energy is going to be. So the polymers are going to be for some more medium term energy. Carbohydrates are also used as structural elements. In plants, cellulose is the woody material in plants, is a very, very large polysaccharide. It's such a large starch that we don't have the capability of digesting it. Other animals, not so much that they have the ability to digest it, but microbes that live in their gut have the ability to take apart these large polysaccharides into usable monosaccharides. So, grasses are largely cellulose. Cows have microorganisms that live inside them that can break the cellulose down into individual monomers, which then the microbes get to live off of and the cows get to live off of. So a symbiosis relationship there. And lastly, in animals, the polysaccharide chitin is all of your insect exoskeletons. So the hard shell on a beetle is actually a carbohydrate. So I'm going to wrap it up there. I hope this helps you find answers more quickly, and I'll do a similar video for amino acids and proteins, nucleotides, and lipids. So, as always, take care of yourself and others, practice good hygiene, and I'll see you on the flip side.